Periodically, we check in with Battle Creek Unlimited, and that's how we'll spend this half hour on Monday. Joe Sobieralski's back with us from BCU. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Richard. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here. You know, it's kind of interesting because they say if you build it, they will come, right? And we sort of have experienced that in Battle Creek with the fort and some other things.
Yeah.
Although maybe it's fair to say over the last several years, the notion has been if there's interest, we'll cater a spot in the fort. The perspective on that has pivoted a little bit recently, hasn't it?
Yeah, you're exactly right, Richard. The fort has been very successful in attracting business, and I don't think anybody would argue that. I think maybe we have shifted our focus the last few years and maybe, I don't know, for lack of a better term, lost sight of really having shovel-ready sites ready. Because just this day and age of business, when somebody wants to make a decision, they want to roll and they want to move. They can't hear that, oh, I might get you a site ready in 12 to 18 months. That time is money.
I see. That's interesting. So to become ready, shovel ready is the phrase that you've used, and we've heard that before. It takes a year to a year and a half.
It could. For instance, this latest project that we're working on, we're trying to fast track it, but by the time we started to explore it, vet out all the options, and by the time we think we're done, that's probably an 8-month process.
Wow. Okay. So there are things you can do that are, I suppose, somewhat universal in preparing a site to be assigned, shall we say. So that's what you're talking about.
Absolutely. Companies want to see infrastructure to the site. They want to see it pad ready, if you will, pad ready, ready to accept concrete footings and run with it. So we're pretty unique in Battle Creek in the fact that Tifa and the city own the land. That was, 40 years ago. It was part of Fort Custer. But there's a lot of rolling hills. There's some timber, and we have all the infrastructure there. It's just a lot of the sites aren't ready to that standard. So
what you have to do to get to the pad ready point? Clear it, apparently, right?
We've got to clear it. There's a lot of elevation in the fort on specific sites, so there will be some heavy excavation work. The site that I think we're probably talking about and everybody's seen in the news, we strategically chose because it could support about 3 20-acre sites, and it comes with what we believe is going to be a lot of excess fill that we can transport to another site, the west side of the airport, and work on getting that ready as well.
So, when you talk about the sizes of those sites and what might go there, is this pad-ready approach somewhat universal?
It's somewhat universal. But I think this approach is it's what's going to set Battle Creek apart from a lot of others. You know, we own the land, we've got it pad ready, we know the price, we can control it. We can control the boundaries. So if somebody's coming in, maybe the first person comes in and looks for 20 acres and the next person wants 40, well, we can say we're going to scratch the other 20 and combine the two and make 40. So that's another reason we chose this site.
Joe Sobieralski's here from Battle Creek Unlimited. We'll talk more about that in just a minute on WBCK. Joe Sobieralski's here from Battle Creek Unlimited. We're talking about Fort Custer and some preparations that have been underway to make some sites ready to go for new tenants there. So the notion that that we have control, the general we, have control over the ownership and what can happen there before someone expresses interest is relatively unique, shall we say, for these kinds of places?
I would say it's pretty unique to the magnitude that we can do it.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So it really means that somebody looking for a site might say, well, it's this choice that's ready now or a choice that's ready in a year and a half.
Yeah, I mean, they could. So site readiness is only one aspect of the equation. I don't want anybody to think that we're going to throw some sites together and if you build it, they will come. But our philosophy is we're going to control what we can. Skilled labor and workforce is the driving thing right now in business. So a company could decide that location X, which is not in Battle Creek, has a lot better workforce and meets their needs a little bit better than what Battle Creek. Battle Creek could meet it, but if that community does not have a site and it may take them 18 months before they can even start construction, the company will probably more than likely take a gamble on Battle Creek because they need to get up and running.
Tips the scales in our favor.
Yeah.
So what are the, top 3 things somebody looking at a site in the fort wants? I think you said number 1 already.
Yeah. Infrastructure there. Skilled workforce. Skilled workforce is number 1. But, even though that is a number 1 issue, Battle Creek, is a little bit different than others. KCC, the Tifa, the city, they've done a great job. We've got the RMTC out there in the Fort Custer Industrial Park, which has unique open entry, open exit type of programs, which it won accolades when it first came out. And
right.
So we do have that, but they're looking for, the infrastructure, the workforce, the proximity to the highway, not being located near a neighborhood, or they want to be in that industrial setting around other folks, so they don't have to worry about those noise complaints,
not disturbing others,
those types of things.
And this has all of that, and I presume that when we're talking about competition, that others do too. So this is a constant examining of what people want.
Absolutely. This is I've got about 10 phases in my head, Richard, but I got 3. You've already heard 1. I can't share the other 2 now that I'd like to accomplish this year, that maybe we'll set ourselves out a little bit further than what we already are. Okay.
So a long-term vision then is something you've been working on.
Yes.
Yeah. And so, you're taking into account what they want. That skilled workforce part, we've heard, and the RMTC should help with this, but we've heard a fair amount about the notion that there are good paying, say, skilled trades jobs and other skills that go unfilled because the access to that talent just isn't there. Yeah. And that may not just be us. That may be on a more regional basis.
It's a majority of America.
That's interesting.
Though there's pockets that probably have a little bit better off than we are, but it's a majority of communities. It's the number 1 issue.
So if somebody comes to you and says, we're looking for X skill and you may not have it, saying RMTC is nearby, does that help
Absolutely.
With that sell?
It piques their interest. And also the DNA that you have in your community. We're a food processing community with, the Post and Kellogg cereal world. And, there's been some layoffs announced, and folks pay attention to that. Companies that are in the food processing business, in this day and age when they have trouble finding talent, they may look at communities that have seen those announcements, because then they know that there's a workforce there.
Right, and if they were to situate here to take advantage of that, everybody wins. Nobody has to move, that sort of thing.
That's the grand idea, yes.
Yeah. What else is interesting about Battle Creek or the general region that people like?
Well, I think it's the proximity. I really do. So if you take the state of Michigan, it's on the southern end of Michigan. It's on 94. It's at the intersection of 94 or 69, essentially. You take 69 down and you get to I-80, 90, which is the crossroads of America. We're just outside of Detroit, and we're between Detroit and Chicago, so we've got the proximity there. And I'm going to take this moment to kind of say you can't fail to recognize over the last week what Fiat Chrysler and Ford has just done. Between the 2 announcements, we're looking at $1.7 billion between Ohio and Michigan, and about 2,700 jobs. I would say we fall within that radius of where those operations or those new jobs will be set up, which suppliers.
Right. Just because Ford and Chrysler and who knows, maybe GM in the future say we want to add jobs and reinvest in Michigan doesn't necessarily mean Detroit.
Absolutely. We will probably benefit from those two announcements. You know, if you're a supplier to them and they canceled their plants in Mexico and they decide to come back to Michigan or Ohio, and you're a critical supplier and you need their contract, you're probably going to follow suit.
And if you situate here, then you have access to ship parts down 94 and 69 pretty easily.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. We're talking with Joe Sobieralski with Battle Creek Unlimited. Back in a moment on WBCK. Few more minutes with Joe Sobieralski of Battle Creek Unlimited. So this is interesting. You know, you're constantly watching the climate around here and happenings that might be Chicago or Detroit and saying, oh, hey, we can latch on to that somehow. Do you take an approach now that Chrysler and Ford have made these announcements? Do you go out and aggressively seek out their suppliers and say, oh, here we are?
That's one approach. We have several approaches, and I don't want to say that we've made all of our decisions based on some of these recent announcements or those types of things. Probably beginning in the summer of 2016 was the first time in a while that we started hearing people were looking at the fort contemplate actually building. A lot of the buildings that were shed in the recession have been absorbed. We still have a couple left, but that was the first time that we actually started hearing people say we're starting to show some interest in building. So that is kind of why we're laying this foundation as well.
Right. That's interesting because if they're willing to shell out capital to build, then that means there's capital to be shelled out.
Absolutely. Which is a good thing for all of us.
So when you look at this business model then, shovel-ready sites, do you say to yourself, okay, to get this ready and we're looking at an occupancy or a sale of some sort within 12 months, 24 months? What's your standard on that?
When somebody were to start to build, when they would occupy, I would say standard would be 6 to 8 months.
That's pretty quick.
From the time, if they can build from day one, 6 to 8 months. Obviously, depending on the size of the building. I'm probably referencing 100,000 to 150,000 square foot building, minimal office.
And we're talking about generally manufacturing facilities?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, which fits the blueprint. But if somebody came in there and said, okay, we're based in California, but we have Detroit connections and we want to be nearby, but it's not a manufacturing facility, is Fort Custer a good match for that?
We do have some areas that are kind of nature-esque, if you will.
Yeah.
Maybe some sites that we're saving for something a little different than manufacturing. So, absolutely.
Very interesting. So, when we talked several months ago, BCU was in something of a transition and you were getting your footing and so on. Now that you've had a chance to observe and become aggressive about certain things, but then observe the climate right now, how has it been changing?
The climate in Battle Creek or the industrial climate or all of it?
Yeah.
I think it's no secret that we had some turnover in the last year.
Yeah.
But I feel really good. I think there's a lot of collaboration going on. You got the BC Vision. It's been out there. It seems to be getting some legs to it. And we've got great dialogue with the city. We got great dialogue with the TIFA, BCU. I'm still building out a team, but I think 2017 you're going to see some good stuff. So I think there's some good synergy. I know we've got the Macy's and the Wendy's of the world, those types of things that we've lost, but all communities are going to lose those bricks and mortar stores because I, as an economic developer, I'm going to want to go out and get that Amazon facility. So it's you got to weigh and you got to balance which way we're going here as a country and as a world. We're going to e-commerce. So, but outside of those e-commerce type of situations, which are kind of out of our control, I think we got a lot of good stuff going for us in 2017.
There's that same notion going on in downtown Battle Creek.
Yeah.
Where, for example, the Heritage Tower, there's a fair amount of optimism that something's going to break there this year. Do the people who situate at the fort look at that kind of stuff?
Yeah, they take the community into account. You know, they don't just come and look at the fort. They go get lunch when they come and look at a site. If they've been here 5 or 6 times, they see a lot of the community, and that's a pretty good indication of what type of community they're in. And depending on what type of labor force they're looking to hire, that's a key component of where they're going to locate as well. Yeah, you might have a shovel-ready site, but if you're looking, for instance, we just talked about, do we have any sites other than just manufacturing? If we're looking for a company or a company's looking to land in Battle Creek out at the fort that may be R&D related, millennial, they want to get that millennial type of generation, they're going to really pay attention to the downtown and what the community has to offer just besides the site itself.
All right, very interesting. We've been looking at what might be worth optimism out there, and there's plenty being talked about right now. You just added to that, so we'll stay in touch.
All right. Well, glad to be here, and thanks for having me.
Look
forward to coming back.
All right. Joe Sobieralski is with Battle Creek Unlimited.